So my husband is on vacation, and we are sitting on the couch. I'm watching him play Dead Island, and there's a knock on our door. When he's home, as the man of the house, he always answers the door. It's just a protective thing he does. He says if it's robbers, he can try to fight them off while I get away. Such a protector. Anyway, he looks out the peephole. No one is there. I kind of figure it's some kids playing Ding Dong Ditch or something, so we ignore it and go back to the video game. About 2 minutes or so later, there's this major banging on the door. I mean like insane banging, like someone took a sledgehammer and hit the door 3 times. It startled the hell out of us, so my husband grabs his gun and walks cautiously to the door. He looks out the peephole. Again, nothing. So he decides to stand there and see if it happens again. A few minutes later, 3 more loud bangs. This time, my husband yanks the door open, determined to catch the person doing it, and nothing. Now there is no way a person could bang on the door and get away before my husband opened it, because he was ready, standing at it. No living person could move that fast. Since we don't see anything, we both realized that it was something supernatural at play. My husband closes the door, deadbolts it, and we returned back to the couch. After about 5 minutes of trying to wrap our heads around what just happened, our rocking chair starts rocking in a slow, steady motion. No windows open at all. I grab my rosaries off the fireplace, and we both immediately start reciting Hail Marys. The rocking chair stops and slides halfway across the floor on its own. We hear bangs and bumps. It sounds like things being thrown about in our house, and then we hear heavy footsteps running toward the door. Mind you, I said my husband deadbolted the door. Suddenly, the deadbolted door swings open, very violently. That door is heavy and thick. It's not easy to fling open like that. And as quickly as the door swung open, it closed the same way. And the house went back to being calm and peaceful, just like that. My parents taught me how to get rid of these things. When I was about 17, something tried to possess me, and when it didn't succeed, it didn't stop trying. Every now and then, it tries, but because I know what to do, and the fact that I have a wonderful and supportive husband that believes in me and helps me, it is too weak. I always suspect when I hear noises in threes that it's this thing, still trying to let me know that it's near. It usually doesn't become a nuisance when my husband is home, almost as if it's afraid of him. I have the most trouble with it when I'm alone. If only I knew how to get rid of it for good. At the time this took place, I was 16 years old. I'm 25 now. It was Halloween in my small South Louisiana town. It was a crisp night. The temperature was in the mid-80s, and the heat showed no signs of slacking off. I was walking around with my older sister and our friend Brooke. My sister had gone as a cat, and Brooke had gone as a witch. I had made the awful decision of wearing a formal gown, since I decided to go as a zombie prom queen. I had a crown and everything. I was drowning in that dress, though. I was so hot, and the corset back was restricting my breathing. It was about 8:40, and all of the kids were pretty much cleared out of the street. We were making our way to the park next to City Hall, where my mother was supposed to pick us up. We were supposed to be there at 9 o'clock. The 3 of us were about 6 blocks away at this point, and my sister had stopped to talk to a friend of hers. I was not stopping, though. It was close to time for my mom to pick us up, and I was not going to be late. Also, I was miserable in that stupid dress, and I wanted to go home. I had carried on for about 2 blocks, and then I noticed that my sister and my friend had both stayed behind. I was annoyed, to say the least. I had only 4 blocks to go before I could lay down in my mother's minivan. Being alone in the dark was starting to give me the creeps. The yellow streetlights didn't do the ambiance any favors. I'd kept my pace and kept walking until I heard the rumble of a muffler coming up behind me. I moved all the way off the road. The large black truck came past me very quickly and turned to the left in front of me. I passed the intersection, and I only had 3 blocks left. Then I heard the truck again. I'd never moved back onto the road, so I didn't bother looking back. It wasn't too strange that the same truck had passed again, but the third time they passed, they slowed down for a good 30 seconds or so. That is what scared me. I didn't recognize the truck, and the windows were tinted heavily. As soon as I thought I could see a bit of a face, they peeled out and disappeared around a corner. I made it another block before I heard the truck again. I was 2 blocks away from my ride, and I was scared to start running. I already couldn't breathe because of the dress, and I was terrified I would pass out. As soon as I heard the truck, my stomach wrenched. I still kept walking, only a good bit faster than I had been. I kept my eyes down and watched my own shadow as the headlights came closer. I heard the brakes, and I had made the decision to run, but I was too late. I realized how close they were to me. I felt a sharp pain on the back of my head, and I looked up the best I could to see an arm sticking out of the window. An eagle clutching a sword was tattooed on his upper forearm. He had my hair wrapped around his fist. Before I could really comprehend the situation, he pumped the gas and was dragging me alongside of his truck. I was running as best I could, clawing his arm. I was crying and screaming. The only thing that kept running through my mind was that if I tripped, I was going to be run over. This man was just laughing. I was completely helpless. Shortly after, he let me go. I fell to my knees on the asphalt. I tore my dress, skinned my palms, and my scalp was on fire. I was inconsolable and I was hyperventilating. I stood up and wiped my face. Then I looked around and felt absolutely violated. I looked back and realized that this man had dragged me by my hair for a whole block and a half. Once I caught my head, I ran across the street to the park. My mother was nowhere to be seen. I climbed into an enclosed slide, and I just curled up and cried. I don't know how long I was laying there before I heard my mother calling my name. I came out, and she was walking up the street calling for me. I walked over to her, and she looked me up and down and started freaking out. Apparently I had blood on my face and dress from my hands. She ran to me and was asking me what happened, and kept looking me up and down for a wound or something worse. I couldn't find my voice. I just held on to her and cried. We spent the next few hours at the police station filling out a report. Long story short, nothing ever came of it. My sister got into trouble with my parents for not being at the city hall on time. She was grounded. My mother had actually left City Hall to go and look for us. She found my sister where I left her, and my sister hadn't even realized that I hadn't stayed. I got into trouble for not staying with my sister, but I didn't get grounded. I'm still pretty mad that the dress was ruined and that I lost the damned crown, but I'm even angrier that that man was never caught. This Halloween, I will be out with my godchild trick-or-treating. It'll be the first one that I've gone out for in the 9 years since this happened. This is not my encounter, but one told to me by a close family friend. He's an Italian male in his late 50s. Unfortunately, he only gave a brief description of the event, and I'm no longer in contact with him, so I'm unable to learn any more. Although I pressed him for details, this is all he told me. He said this occurred somewhere in Italy when he was 15 years old. Walking home from a friend's house through a wooded area, a craft appeared hovering above the trees and approached him. He didn't give a description of the craft or say if it landed or not, but told me there were people inside, and they were around 4 or 5 feet tall. I asked if he was scared, but he said no. He was very excited and overwhelmed with happiness. He said he waved to them and they waved back, and that they spoke to him. I'm not sure if he meant verbally or telepathically. He said they invited him to go with them, far away. He politely declined, stating he was happy here, that he didn't want to leave. They departed in the craft and he hurried home, excitedly telling his mother of his encounter. She wasn't pleased to hear this story and told him never to tell anyone else. They would think badly of him and possibly her also. I'm not sure if she believed him or not. He told me this story with tears in his eyes, saying he was grateful for the experience and still remembered the overwhelming joy he felt at the time. I'd known him since I was a young child and trusted him completely. He was always very serious, never joked or lied, as far as I knew. And his story surprised me as I never expected him to be the type of person to experience something like this. His emotion in telling me convinced me even more than just trusting his honesty. I'd never seen him so emotional on any other occasion, which made this so much more significant. Does anyone know of other witnesses from Italy claiming to have made contact with beings from a UFO? I was staying at a friend's house in Hollywood in the guest room and was trying to sleep. I think I passed out for an hour or so, but I ended up waking up. I do not believe this was sleep paralysis or a dream, because I was fully conscious and awake when it happened, and I was able to move around, speak, and see the room decently, even though it was dark. I've had sleep paralysis a few times before. It's very rare for me, and I didn't feel paralyzed or panicked. I was listening to music with my earbuds in and my eyes closed when I felt the presence of something in my room and a tap on my arm. It startled me a bit, and I sat up straight. I saw in the dark, right beside my bed, the figure of a woman. I couldn't make out much of her features, but she was probably about 5'2". She was hunched over, and she had messy white hair, several necklaces, and long earrings. She moved in a very fluid manner and almost seemed to glide as she walked and reached out towards me. She held out a handwritten note that had many of the lines on it scratched out aggressively. It seemed like it was about my life. I don't exactly know what happened, but I swear she was able to telepathically communicate with me. She said,
"It's better this way, don't you think?"
as she handed me the note to look at. I was almost in a trance or something, because I was in absolute awe of what was happening, but I handed the note back without absorbing any of it, and said, "Yeah, I agree." She took it back and turned away quickly, and just like that, she was gone, and my door was left open. It took me a good minute to try and process what had happened, and I quickly ran over to my friend in his girlfriend's room. She told me she was having trouble sleeping too, and had seen some odd flashes of light outside her window a few times that night. I went outside to smoke a cigarette and felt an incredible sense of peace and calmness overcome me, and I didn't feel worried about the encounter, because throughout it I didn't feel like I was in danger. She seemed like she was trying to protect me or watch over me, and I was okay with that. Last year, I had a very strange experience in a national forest out in California. I was by myself on a road trip with my dog, and I was driving pretty far into Mendocino National Forest. I like to camp in national parks or forests because it's isolate, so my dog can roam and they're free of charge. A trade-off for sketchy rough drives into the parks sometimes, and lack of service and assistance. Anyway, I was driving up this dirt road kind of curling up a mountain. It was about 5 p.m. It was very nice out, sunny and warm with a slight breeze. Nothing serious happened, but I felt extremely uncomfortable driving into the area, and that feeling did not let up. Driving up the mountain, I felt like I shouldn't stay there, and I even texted my boyfriend about it for as long as I could, before my phone completely lost service. I was looking for a sign of another person having been around the area lately, but didn't see anything. I pulled over and got out of my car with my dog to look over the edge, and noticed a dead squirrel and some broken glass mixed in with the dirt and gravel road. Yuka, my dog, starts to growl slightly. She is vocal, but I've pretty much only seen her growl at or with other dogs. I did see her growl at a possum once, so it could be something she smelled maybe. This place continued to make me feel quite on edge, but I pride myself in being an independent traveler and backpacker, so I decided to continue, at least a bit further with my grumbling pup, to see if I could find a good place to camp. I continue to notice more dead animals. Keep in mind, no one is going to be going more than 5 or 10 miles per hour up this thing, and that's if anyone ever comes up here. I hear men's voices. They sound close, and I think I should call out to them, so I stop my car, but then kind of freeze up and feel like I shouldn't. I can't really make out what they're saying. I don't see any sign of people anywhere, and I get back in my car and continue to slowly drive forward and cautiously look for where the voices could be coming from. I've never ran into other people in a national park or forest when I've gone this deep in. The unsettling feeling grows about the voices, which have sort of come and gone a few times, and I give up and begin to turn my car around. I honestly don't remember how Yuka was acting on the way down. I was scared and focused on getting out of there. Kind of dangerously fast, I went back down the mountain, not seeing any sign of anyone. I decided to spring for luxury and get a hotel for the night. I figured I was just fine. Huge and open spaces can be intimidating, I told myself, and the voices could have been echoing from somewhere far off, and they just sounded close. Animals die. Glass gets broken. Nothing happened. Cool. But I remember this place. It sticks with me. Whenever I'm watching scary movies, if I'm walking my dog in the woods at night, nothing compares to the feeling I had driving up that mountain, and it's honestly kind of interesting to me, as well as frightening. Fast forward a year. I've mentioned this place to a few people, and the haunting vibes it gave me, but nothing much more. I googled the national park once, and didn't see anything, but I didn't really look too hard either. I like scary movies and things of that nature, hence my fascination in this little event. So my boyfriend and I were coming up on finishing our road trip just yesterday. We were in Wyoming for a wedding. There were only 2 or 3 hours left, and the sun had set, so we decided to listen to some scary podcasts and YouTube videos. We ended up on a true stories video dealing with the Native American lore. I'm half paying attention, petting my dog, playing Pokemon on an emulator, and I hear the narrator mention Wendigos. He very briefly says what they are, and casually mentions they can mimic voices. I mean it when I say the most horrible chills I've ever had in my life crawl down my spine, and I stare at my boyfriend and ask him if he remembers that national forest I was freaked out about last year. He says he does, and he reminds me that he texted me that I was probably close to a Wendigo. I remember him saying that, but didn't know much about their lore, and thought he was just being funny. Like, yeah, Bigfoot is probably stalking you, or some other dad joke. He said that he was mostly messing around, but that he specifically brought that up because I was hearing voices that I couldn't find a source for. I felt strange as fuck, and I started Googling Wendigos. They are allegedly able to mimic human voices, and they would live in that sort of area. Obviously, there's a ton of questionable info out there, but I tried to find more reputable websites and authentic experiences. I then specifically looked up missing persons in the area, and the first headline that catches my eye is, "Another family goes missing in Mendocino." I went through different websites and news articles of people going missing, but they are all a little hidden underneath national park websites and pictures of trees. I remembered looking up the forest about a year ago and didn't see anything, and realized these stories didn't seem to be talked about much, which also piqued my intuition. It was stated that well over 100 people in the past 8 years have gone missing, on top of many which are found dead. It just has my intuition super spiked. Remembering how unsafe I felt and how much I wanted to get out of there terrifies me. I felt so uneasy about what I was hearing, and do to this day. My dog and I are very close. She was a stray that started following me one day, and I ended up bringing her home from Costa Rica. So her little growls along the way make me feel like there was something wrong. And even though it was just a storytelling video, those stories originate from somewhere. It's been a couple of months since this happened. I live in a quiet village in the south of Germany. Next to our village is a rather large forest, with lots of hiking and biking trails leading through it. When I was little, either my aunt or my dad took me there for walks almost every second day. It became a habit for me to keep on going for walks through the forest later on in my life, but that changed a couple months ago. I usually went on walks with music on during the day, but one night, during a full moon, I felt a little brave and bored at the same time, and decided to go for a stroll. I grabbed a flashlight just in case, and my phone before I headed out. Halfway through my usual route, I was feeling happy and enjoyed my music, until I came across the little bridge that leads to the forest. One of my songs faded out, but before the next one started, I heard the most blood-curdling scream I've ever heard in my entire life. I took off my headphones, thinking that maybe a boar or another forest critter stepped into a trap, since that happens from time to time here. But once I took another step and I was halfway over the bridge, I heard it again, this time closer. I turned on my flashlight and saw among the trees next to the entry path a snow-white, skinny-as-hell, black-eyed face looking straight at me. I've never felt this horrified in my entire life. My gut told me that if I took another step, I'd be dead. I turned around and ran the other way, straight home, with a constant feeling of dread. Ever since, whenever I'm home alone, I feel watched and uneasy. On several occasions, I even hear footsteps outside on our porch, and garden chairs pushed around. I have no clue what I've seen or what to do about it. If any of you have an explanation on what the hell that thing could be, or why it's still stalking me, please let me know. Since my father is not a Redditor, I figured I would share his experience from last night. He is an avid hunter, has been for 40 years. He's seen some strange things while hunting, but nothing like this. This is the story from his point of view. I'd been sitting in the tree stand, which is about 12 to 14 feet above the ground, watching some small deer about 30 yards away. The sun was setting, where you could only see outlines of the deer. All of a sudden, I hear a large commotion where the deer were. I could hear them running away frantically. As I stared in the direction of the noise, I saw a large figure standing where the deer had been. The figure seems to turn, and all I can see is large red eyes. The figure starts walking towards me, so I start making noise to try and scare it away. It continues to slowly walk towards me and stops at the base of the tree stand. I always carry my hunting rifle and a small revolver when I hunt, so I pull out the revolver and say a warning that I have a gun and I will shoot. No response as I see it looking up at me. I start firing the gun, 6 shots into the figure. No movement or sound. After a few seconds, I feel something grab the base of the tree stand and start shaking it. It felt like it was trying to climb up to me. I close my eyes and start yelling the Lord's Prayer. I'm not very religious, haven't been to church or prayed in years, but I just started praying. As I got a few lines into the prayer, the shaking stopped. I looked down, and it was gone. I was frozen. I grabbed my phone and called a friend who was hunting nearby to come and get me. I could not move until he parked his truck directly under me and assured me nothing was there. We looked all around and could not see any footprints or signs of something being there. My dad believes it was some sort of demon or spirit. He put all of his hunting gear away today. 40 years of hunting, given up after one terrifying night. Hey guys and ladies, thanks for watching. If you want me to tell your story or read a creepypasta, email me at the address in the description. There's also a link down there for a couple shirts, and I'll have more options soon. Come follow me on Instagram and Twitter at Corey Rhino. And be good to animals, even people. So.
Já, snemma, bergsbis, hrish.
TDI gets wasted and reads a story. All right, now. Here we go. As the woman drove down a deserted highway, she noticed a lone pair of headlights quickly approaching her car from behind. When the car came closer, she noticed it was going to overtake her. The car drew up beside her, but then the driver suddenly swerved back behind her car. She started getting nervous and kept an eye on the strange car in her rear view mirror. I hate the word mirror. Okay. Like rural. Alright. He pulled up dangerously close to her rear bumper and began flashing his high beams at her. The headlights dimmed for a moment, but then the high beams flashed again, and the car behind her surged forward. The car followed her very closely, and on the tight curves, or over hills, he would flash his high beams on and off. The frightened woman struggled to keep her eyes on the road, and fought the urge to keep looking at the car behind her. Finally, she approached her exit, but the car continued. Holy fuck. Alright. But the car continued to follow, flashing the high beams again and again. The terrified woman looked out. Masseuse. The terrified woman took out her mobile phone and dialed 911. There's nothing funny yet. When the operator answered, the woman screamed into the phone. "A car is following me. He keeps tailgating and blinking his lights at me." The woman gave her address, and in a few minutes she saw the red and blue lights of a police car in the distance. She breathed a sigh of relief as she pulled away. She breathed a sigh of relief as she pulled into her driveway. But suddenly, the strange car pulled into the driveway behind her and began blinking its lights on and off like a maniac. The police car screeched to a halt on the woman's front lawn, and two officers jumped out with their guns drawn. They pulled the man out of the strange car and forced him to lie face down on the lawn. When they handcuffed him as he screamed. "There's someone in her car! There's someone in her car!" The two policemen suddenly pointed their guns in the woman's direction and fired. The woman screamed. But when she turned around, she saw the bloody corpse of a murderer fall out. She saw the bloody corpse of a murderer fall out of her back seat. There was a large butcher knife still clasped. There was a large butcher knife still clasped in. All right. There was a large butcher knife still clasped in his cold, dead hand. The police searched her back seat and found duct tape, a blindfold, and a pair of handcuffs lying there. The woman realized that the man in the strange car had been trying to save her. When the police released him, he explained that as he pulled up behind her car and his headlights lit up her back seat, he had seen a man with a butcher knife rising up behind her. Just as the madman was about to stab her, he flashed his high beams, and the figure crouched back down. I flashed my high beams every time I saw him raise the knife, he said. Lock your car, you fucking idiot.